I'm glad to welcome our next guest, Ms. Shailaja, who is a versatile being. She's an author, certified integral yoga and Manasa yoga teacher, TV host and speaker. She grew up in Coimbatore, India, but she is based in Malaysia. She has over 20 years of teaching experience and is the founder of Mat and Am Beyond Yoga Studio. She hosted Yoga Shakti, a TV series on Anand TV based in UK. She conducts online asana and pranayama and Dhyana classes in UK and USA. Over the years, she has been invited to speak at several educational institutions and organizations in Malaysia, India and USA. She has been featured in leading newspapers in India. Ms. Shailaja hosts podcasts on Facebook with eminent personalities in yoga and Vedanta. She is a passionate advocate of mental wellness through the tools of yoga including asana, pranayama, dhyana, mantra and yoga sutra philosophy. And she seeks to share that knowledge through every platform available to her. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Ms. Shailaja.
Shailaja ji, most welcome. So nice to see you again. And whole stage is yours to speak on open-mindedness in spiritual exploration, welcoming different parts of truth. Most welcome. All your stage.
Namaste and thank you, Vikramji. So, to get started, I would also like to offer my deepest appreciation to the team of United Consciousness for their untiring efforts year after year, creating events such as these to promote oneness, peace, and of course, a united consciousness. And I would also like to thank Team United Consciousness for giving me this platform and allowing me to share this space as a speaker. Now, before I begin my talk, I'd just like to start with a prayer. So, if you could just close your eyes. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So, as I step into my topic, when we talk about Indian philosophy, there are basically fundamentally the part of Dvaitam, which is duality, and Advaitam, which is non duality. So, there is no one singular path to one truth, but a common thread that goes through all of these paths is that it leads to a release or an end to suffering, which is termed as dukkham. Now, whether it is the Yoga Sutras, where Maharshi Patanjali tells us, Heyam dukkham anagatam, which means pain that can be coming to us in the future must be avoided. Or it is Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, as he tells Arjuna, Ashochan anvasochastvam. Do not grieve over what must not be grieved about. Or it is the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, where sage Swatmarama says, Asheshan tapataptanam samashraya ato hataha. When we are completely burnt by suffering, take refuge in Hatha Yoga. So, as you can see, the thread of release from suffering runs through the different philosophies. So now let us explore, why do we suffer? Now, this again can be a common thread because it is considered in the Yoga Sutras as well that we suffer because of avidya, ignorance of the reality of who we are. And as this veil of ignorance is removed and we connect to our true nature of who we really are, then that releases suffering. And even when it comes to the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that as we work towards developing a strong intellect, then we can get a release from suffering. Yeah, so this notion of avidya or ignorance is a very strong thread. And the antidote to that is the cultivation of a strong intellect. Now, what is this avidya? What do we mean by avidya or ignorance? It refers to our inability to discern or discriminate between nitya and anitya, what is eternal and what is transient, and also between atma and anatma, what is self and what is non self. So, as we keep identifying with what is ever changing, ignoring what is never changing, we get mired in dukkham, suffering. And this results because of our term called samyoga, or a deep conjunction and identification that we form with the ever changing, which is our name, our form, our position in life, what they call nama, rupa, vyavahara. That is what we are always identified with, right? We have this great job, we're so attached to it. But as we all know, that we can always lose our job in a minute. Similarly, when it comes to relationships, one of the most sacred relationships is that between mother and child. But as a parent, we all know that even that too changes, because the need of a baby is different from the need of a teenager and is very different from the need of a adult child. So everything is a constant state of flux. Even when we take our own bodies, there are all these different stages that our bodies go through. When we are born as babies, then we become toddlers, children, young adults, middle aged adults, old age, right? And then we finally die, right? So our bodies go through so many changes, and I'm sure we all can experience those changes as we go through life. And even otherwise, minute to minute, our bodies are changing, right? Old cells are dying off, new cells are being born. Nothing remains the same. Everything is ever changing. So, that is the whole understanding that we have to have, that we keep seeking permanence in what is ever changing. And we need to shift our focus to what is eternal, what never changes. Now, for example, I'm going to again refer back to a beautiful prayer in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which goes Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya. Lead us from unreal to real, lead us from darkness to light, and lead us from death to immortality. So, what really dies, right? So, an example to give is that a log of wood dies to become planks of wood. Now, planks of wood die to become a chair, and a chair dies to become firewood, and a fire dies to become ash. Now, the name and form of all of these different aspects, whether it is a log of wood or whether it is a plank, whether it is a chair, the names and forms are different. But it is the same substance that runs through all of it. And that is what we have to see, the oneness. But we are so mired because of the ego, in this me versus you, in this them versus us, that we are unable to see what really brings us together. Our focus is always on separation, what separates us. And this labels and bound creates these boundaries and divisions, which leads to that sense of otherness. And that when we are mired in otherness, then we cannot experience the oneness. So, what we have to do while we talk about open mindedness, it is more an open heartedness that we need to have. That open heart to be able to accommodate, include diverse opinions, diverse beliefs, radically different beliefs. It is all very hard and challenging, but that is the practice to keep the conversation going and to not shut our hearts to people and opinions that are different from ours. And that is how we can maintain that sense of connection. Otherwise, we are just like isolating ourselves and connecting only to a sense of separation and separatedness. Now, when we come to the Hatha Yoga practices, though they may not focus so much on the intellect, like Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, even through the path of Karma Yoga, Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam, it requires that strong intellect as that antidote to avidya. And even in the Yoga Sutras, Maharshi Patanjali says, Viveka Kyatir Aviplava Hano Upaya. That constant, continuous, moment to moment discerning is what gives us that release from suffering. Right? So, the path for Yoga Sutras in Gita is all about developing that strong intellect. Now, impurities in Hatha Yoga Pradipika and in the Hatha Yoga practices, they accept that impurities exist, but they are all energy patterns. And these energy patterns sediment along the lines of the energy channels that carry these energies, called the nadis. So, Hatha Yoga, based on tantric practices, they work in the context of the five elemental bodies, the seven chakras, and the nadis, which carry these energy flows throughout. And when these nadis get blocked through these impurities, these energy patterns that sediment them, then we feel all those negative emotions and we act in negative and destructive ways. So, the practices, whether it is asana, pranayama, chakras, mudras, bandhas, all of these practices are to release those energy patterns so that we may connect to our true selves. So, on the surface of it, it all looks very different. If you look at Bhagavad Gita, if you look at other Vedanta texts, right, they talk about Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. That is the path where you have to listen, you have to contemplate, and then you have to meditate. That is the path. Whereas when you connect to Hatha Yoga practices, they seem to be having completely different practices, right? It's like standing on your head, stretching on a mat, but eventually the path is the same. Yeah, we're all trying to connect to our true self, connect to our inner self, which in Vedanta is termed Satchit Ananda, and in Shaivism it is termed Satyam Shivam Sundaram. Yeah, and the path towards that is with an open heart and with wisdom, by that deep connection we develop with the Agnya Chakra or the third eye. Right? The third eye, the location of the third eye also is physically above the physical eyes. Yeah. So by cultivating that deep connection with third eye, by connecting to our inner wisdom, we are able to have that higher perspective and we're able to rise above these lines and demarcations that separate us and create boundaries and see the oneness amongst everyone and everything, to rest in that one consciousness. So I'm going to end my talk with this beautiful line again from the Gita: Vasudevam Sarvamiti. Everything rests in that one light, in that one united consciousness. Yeah, namaste.
So nice, Shailja ji. You kept your speech on the topic and rooted in scriptures, left and right. You quoted all different paths that leads to the same truth. You mentioned about Yoga Sutra. You mentioned about Dvaita, Advaita, both. You mentioned about Yoga Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and you mentioned that when suffering happens, then we need to take resort to Hatha Yoga, and suffering happens because we don't know our true nature, and that is because of avidya. And then you said that antidote to avidya is viveka. You precisely mention as nitya nitya, atma anatma bheda, from from ever changing to never changing, from sanyoga to limited identities, to sanyama to what is eternal. You also quoted Brhadakaranya Upanishad saying, lead from Mrityu to Amrita, and from Namarupa to something which is beyond Namarupa. I like the way you define death, something which changes name and form. And when we cling on name and form, then separation and otherness happens. But when we have open-mindedness, the term you used, then it leads to that oneness, and that helps us to accept the diversity. When we accept the diversity, it gives us a sense of connection that leads to oneness. Not only that, you also gave us some tools, like as a upaya, we should go for illumination of intellect, viveka khyati, 5 elements, 7 chakras, nadi processes, shravan, manan, nidyasan, three, going beyond 3 bodies, and opening our third eye for united consciousness to realize Satchitananda. That's a perfect, elegant speech based on scriptures. I am sure that it must have immensely benefited all, as it has benefited me. Thank you very much, Shalja ji. We are organizing a grand event in Ujjain next February, 5th,
Oh,
14, 15, and 16 February. You are most welcome. Please connect me offline so that we can extend the invite for you also.
thank you so much, and thank you for this honor.
Yes.
On behalf of United Consciousness, I thank Ms. Shailaja for coming onto the platform of United Consciousness. Thank you so much.